you're talking about the legal relationships between artists and dealers, and then the relationships between dealers and collectors, and that whole kind of triangle that keeps the art market moving. And Fred has been in Miami, I guess, for 30 years now, 30-some years?
34 years. We've been open for 34 years.
Okay, 34 years, longer than most people who live here.
And alive.
And it comes from Philadelphia. And I lived here in Philadelphia also, so we have that in common. So, Fred, thank you very much for having us. And we hope that the law students and the art students will find some things in common and mingle a bit together. Because we're standing, not if they're going to stand for 45 minutes. So we will talk about some things and then go next door to the other gallery, and you will get a chance to know one another as well.
Let me just also tell you that my students who are here are artists. They're all in their senior year of college at the World School of the Arts, which is one of the best little art schools in the world, in the country, for sure. You have this great art school. At any rate, so they're about to graduate with a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree in the spring, if they plan to graduate. But I think one of the great things, one of the really important things about this little moment is that for me, it's almost never, the time that you guys are going to be exposed to each other, you all need each other desperately in your lives. If you're, whatever profession you are, you need artists in this world. It critically more and more needs visual art. It needs artists of all kinds. And for artists, there's no question that you guys are going to need a lawyer. So you're going to need professional people because they're going to be the people that are going to be able to support your career. They're going to be able to collect your work. But they're also going to be able to help you legally and all sorts of complicated things that occur in the life of an artist. So if somehow or other, because you guys all were in the same room together today, and something good happened from that, that would make us both feel really good. But I think that's an important thing, and you shouldn't hesitate to talk to each other, because these artists are the creme de la creme, and it's the only time they'll hear that from me, but is the truth. They're really the 1/2 of 1 percentile in the country. So you guys have a chance to be with them. And I know that UM has a great law program, so you're the same. So it's a good moment for us.
So let's get started. I think one of the things Fred and I just have to touch base on is that this is a for-profit gallery. And so you have to be a successful business person to do what you do. That's kind of the baseline. And the question, I guess a couple questions flow from that. That is, you'll be successful, I assume, if you select good artists. So the question would be, how among the many artists that must send you portfolios do you select artists to represent? And, well, let's start there. How do you select the artists? Let's make a big question. How do you select the artists to represent, and what are the mechanisms you as an art dealer have to promote their careers? What is it that you add to an artist's ability to be successful?
Well, I'll just go back a little bit to tell you that when I first opened the gallery, I had an MFA, a Master's degree in Fine Arts, in studio. So I was a sculptor and continued to make work. And so I spent many, many years studying visual arts. So when I first opened the gallery, I remember calling my father and saying, "This is amazing," because imagine you were a pharmacist, and you opened a drugstore, but all the other pharmacists in town weren't pharmacists. They had drugstores, but they didn't know anything about pharmacy. Well, that's how I felt, and I, to some extent, still feel that way. Any one of you tomorrow can rent a space in Wynwood and open a gallery, and it can be Joe Blow Gallery, and you will immediately get a load of artists that come to you, and you can show their work, and you can even sell it. It will sell. So, what I think, I try to distinguish myself, and over the years we have, is that we supposedly know what we're doing. That it's an informed eye, and it's not always necessarily an eye that is directed initially towards sales. So there are many, many artists that I can put put in this gallery that I could sell a lot faster than the work you see in the world on the wall. But I have a vested interest in a long-term situation. And very much like an artist who would paint a painting, do a body of work, and you're a painter, and you have a show, and it all sells out. And then the temptation to go home and make more paintings just like the ones you made because you sold them all, that exists, that's a problem. That's not a reason to make art. That's not a reason to make the work. That's not a reason for me to be here. So there's a bit of a dilemma in this profit situation. And I think the better the gallery is, either because they're very wealthy, and typically a lot of dealers started out very, very wealthy, so they could be independent of the temptation to have the market drive what they show. I did not open this gallery wealthy and spent most of my time raising 3 kids and mortgaging my house every 3 years. Not because I'm a wonderful guy and that's like this altruistic thing, but I didn't have anything else to do. This is all I know. So, coming from that, when it comes to choosing work to show in the gallery, it's evolved over the years, but I have to be extremely opportunistic. So we used to just show Latin American art and this kind of art and that kind of art, to sort of take a position, but I don't have that anymore. My position is an opportunistic position. I want to show the best artists that I have access to. And ultimately, the beginning and end of it is my art. It's what I think is good, based on 34 years, maybe 40 years of looking and thinking and questioning and trying to figure out what's relevant and what art should be. So I picked these artists based on the quality of the work and not whether I can sell it. There's some demographic issues that I think are part of just culturally. I think there's interesting artists doing interesting things, and they come from different parts of the demographic. So somebody who's on the edge in one way or another is somehow has a different vision of culture in the world, and so they can be more interesting, and also if they can technically execute the work. So that's a little bit about who I choose.
Let me just ask a question about that in terms of, you say ultimately it's your eye. I'm thinking of an artist whose work I got to at the Art Center on Lincoln Road. I was trying, I was autocase. But yeah, really amazing. He hit my eye perfectly. He might have hit your eye, but 5 years later, he's still doing the same because he sells out show after show everywhere he sends his stuff. So there must be something. If you had met him and that had hit your eye might have said, "This is an artist I want to represent." How do you suss out the rest? Is this somebody who's willing to push edges? Is somebody who wants to grow, who's willing to grow? I mean, how do you get a sense of whether this is an artist when you're going to have to say a year later to 5 years later, you haven't changed a thing, and even though you're successful, this isn't satisfactory for me?
It's a really good question, and I think what happens is I'm sort of in the business of it's a marriage, and so you're not just looking for a one-night stand. You're looking for a long-term relationship, so they might look really good in the bar that night, and you take them home, but it's essentially the same. Sorry to make such a crummy kind of metaphor, but that's where my brain is. But at any rate, that's where all our brains are. The reality of it is that what happens if you do that enough, and you have enough of those, or if you have a good instinct for it, is that you start to, these are relationships. We have verbal contracts, but we marry these people. And so, if you have to marry 25 people, and that's your business, then you start to learn that what they look like in the bar that night is not the whole game. And then you try and find out more about them, and you try and look at bodies of work and history. It's also why it's very difficult for young artists, because young artists are untested. And so they might have a really interesting body of work for a year and a half, and you really don't know where they're going to be. So it's happened many times, where either they produce the same work over and over again, or the next body of work they produce is really uninteresting. But you also talk to the artist. I mean, it's not just looking at the work. You look at the work, you talk to the artist, you find out what their position is. And when we always hammer away at my students about an artist's statement, about an artist being able to articulate, verbalize something bigger than just what they've worked on for this body of work, as a way that critics, curators, dealers are going to try and suss them out and figure out who these people really are. So we have long-term relationships. And most of the artists that we represent, we've represented for 10 or 15 years. And many of whom haven't sold very much at all in the 10 or 15 years. Others who sell enough to pay for all. So I think, is that kind of answer to that?
So once you've selected an artist to work with, bring in to marry, you're polygamist, I guess. And so once you get a new spouse, what do? What is it that a dealer can do with or for artists to help them be successful?
Well, I'll tell you a little bit of the insight. So the artist comes in, and basically there's no big mystery. It used to be different in the old days, but basically it's 50-50. So basically, they have a painting, pays $100, when we sell it, I get 50, they get 50. And there are many artists who say, like, well, why don't I just get the whole 100 and I don't need a dealer? Well, what we've done for 34 years is develop a network of collectors, curators, critics, art fairs, exposure, and we spend a lot of money to promote the career of the artist. So what we would do with an artist is we would begin with a CD, try and find out where they've been and what we can put down tangibly to have other people measure their career. Oh, well, they were in the show that was in the art last year. Oh, that's good. So that accumulation of things is critical. So we do that. We have a website. We do 10 art fairs a year. We're involved.
At least for my students, I think artists certainly know what an art fair is. What do you mean do an art fair?
So
what is an art fair and what does it mean to do it?
Okay, so we run the space.
Let me if somebody comes up that any of you has a question about this is meant to become, I'm starting it, but this is meant to become interactive.